So welcome to the Treasury Elite Entrepreneur Series. Once again, I would like to thank all our viewers and members for supporting this noble cause of Treasury Elite, whose main objective is networking, knowledge sharing. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Abhishek Goenka, founder and CEO of IFA Global and Treasury Elite. We bring in one-stop foreign exchange and treasury solutions for companies across India over the last 16 years. And today we have Dr. M. Manickam. Mr. Manickam is the Executive Chairman and Managing Director of Shakti Sugars Limited. He is also the Chairman and Managing Director of Shakti Auto Component Limited. He is also the Chairman of the Governing Council of Dr. Manickam College of Engineering and Technology and many other colleges and educational institutions. In recognition of his contribution in the management of agro-processing industries and agricultural development, he was awarded the Doctor of Science by Tamil Nadu Agriculture University in July 2010. Welcome, Dr. Manickam. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much.
Glad to have you today as a part of our Treasury Elite Entrepreneur Series. In the next few minutes, we would love to learn from your experiences. So, Dr. Manickam, I ask this question to every global CEO whom I interact, is that I think the one common thread which I could connect with a lot of global CEOs who have spent a lot of time in their businesses, that they're just not doing this for the money. What keeps you excited every morning to get to work? Or if I may ask, what is your why?
It's an interesting question. You normally don't try to put in time and think about why you're working. That's something which is a part of you. I think somebody asked, Tenzing on why he climbed Mount Everest, and the answer was because it's there. So, you work because you want to work. And normally you tend to be excited if you start working in something which your heart is also, interested in. So if you like your work, then it's not a tedium. It's something that you like to work on and then start building. So that's been the thing. And I think your motive keeps changing over time. Because when you were young, you had a different motive. And then in your middle age, you have a different motive. And as you get older, your motives change. So each person has a different perspective. So I think you are looking at different aspects in terms of industry. And for me, I think particularly, I would think just because something is interesting and I think we can contribute in managing that in a better way, I'd like to work on it. So we've been working on various fields, in sugar, in auto components, and in education and health. So these are things that I'm working on. Right now, my passion actually is going towards health and creating a lot of options for health, and we have developed methods for treating cancer, treating heart diseases, and handling COVID. And it's quite an interesting option, which is keeps you busy.
Excellent. And that's a pretty interesting journey, and I'm sure in the rest of this section we're going to have some more insights from you. So, of course, so we all have had our ups and downs. We would love to know some of your important milestones, learnings, the biggest risks that you have undertaken in your entrepreneurial journey. If you could share some examples, and especially from the downs, and what did you learn from it?
See, life is a series of success and failures, okay? Once I've heard a speaker speak, and he said it's actually a series of steps, and it's a success followed by failure and success followed by failure. So it's it's 1 plus 1 minus, that kind of a thing. And in fact, what he was saying was interesting. The last step that you exit on is what people really remember you by. Correct. So whether you exited on success or a failure, that basically travels with you. Like for Napoleon, everybody remembers Waterloo, which was actually his downfall. And nobody really remembers the guy who defeated him. If you ask most people the question, they wouldn't remember Wellington. I mean, nobody would tell you Wellington defeated Napoleon in the Waterloo War. So it's a step, and you need to be unmindful of whether you won or lost, and keep moving. That's basically what keeps you. If you have a mission, you could keep working towards the mission. And that's been the kind of thing. And I think for me, one of the big experiences has been we actually started a number of companies overseas, and now with the pandemic and the situation there, I found working out of India is better than working overseas. So, what happens is when a crunch comes in, you're always better off working in home territory. So that's something which I'm quite, a very big lesson that I've learned. So we're looking at focusing on home territories at this point of time.
Right. Very rightly said, sir. Whether you open Gita or whether you open Vipassana by Mr. Goenka or any other spiritual journey, whatever you follow, ultimately that's the lesson that we have all learned. That every event is just an outcome. It is our own mind which decides whether it's a success or a failure. Ultimately, and we have to be just an observer in every particular action that happens in our life. So, Dr. Manickam, this is slightly different. Now, when we do business, we make investments, and across life we make investments. It could be in business, it could be an asset, it could be a land, it could be people. How do you determine, and that's your personal philosophy, how do you determine the concept of risk and return? What's your thought process? What's your formula whenever you have to do an investment across business, assets, people? What's your thought process?
I mean, it's not a very discrete process to say, risk versus return. Nobody actually gives you a formula to say, okay, this is the percentage of risk and this is the return you're going to get. It's a gut feel. I mean, what I keep telling people is that even to bankers, what we are selling them is a bundle of dreams. Right? So when you go to a banker or you go to an investor and you're making a projection, or even to your own employees, or even to your own team, when you're making a projection or you're making a decision, it's a dream that you're hoping to achieve, right? So there's no certainty that you will achieve it. There's no certainty that the market really wants what you're going to produce. There's no certainty that it's going to be a great thing. So basically, it's a shared dream that you try to take it across. And what I found was most times that it's better that you open your ideas to other people so they can probably contribute to it and also tell you, this is something which has been tried before. Hopefully, don't try this. Or somebody would say, okay, I think it's a good idea. So it's when you ideate, the whole idea is being shared with the team of people and with as many people as you can. Then your chance of success becomes a little better, right? So this is what we need to really work on. And that takes time, and you get experience, as to how the feedback comes in and how you can work with it. And the return on risk is something you can't really quantify. I mean, you are working on achieving something. So I'm not sure if I'm really going to make too much money on this or not going to make money, but I just want to succeed in the task. So you focus on the task, and the returns become a byproduct of that.
That's right. So rightly said that sometimes you just have to knock the door, and to a lot of people, so that the probability of a success increases, because you don't know how people are going to buy your idea. But of course, we have to go and approach them, and the more people we approach, the more probability it becomes. Very truly said. Dr. Manickam, how has businesses changed? When you were in your 20s and 30s, things have changed a lot. I mean, we see billion-dollar businesses, loss-making companies having $10 billion valuations. And we see young entrepreneurs coming out of in their 20s and early 30s because the allocation of capital and the ease by which they can raise capital has become very easy. The world is like one place. what are the trends that you are seeing, and what has not changed and will never change?
Okay. As you say, change is permanent. Okay, things keep changing. And I keep telling youngsters when we talk to them, in 1980, we used to wait for 20 years to get a telephone connection. All right.
Right.
Now you call one of these telephone companies, they'll give you 20 connections in a second.
Correct.
And each of us carry around about 5 SIM cards, whether it's on your phone or your laptop or on your, some kind of a vehicle, whatever, So today communication has become a lot easier, which was something you didn't anticipate in 1980. You apply to, the PTN, Post and Telegraph Department, and waited for about 20 years before you'll get a number. A lot of things have changed that. Similarly, scooters, you used to wait 15 years to get a Bajaj scooter, right? And you used to wait about 8 years to get a Fiat car or 5 years to get an Ambassador car. This was the situation in 1980. And something like buying a house was a mission of a life. It's not as, somebody says, okay, I built a house, it is different.
Yeah.
And today, what you're seeing is absolutely something which is easy, and you can get this. And, so the youngsters are able to get a lot more from their, investments, which is fantastic. But not to say the risk is not increased. Those days, actually, risk was probably lower because the options were lower. Okay, you don't have much of a risk, but today you have a possibility to lose everything in one day. It depends upon what kind of option they're taking and what kind of risk. And that basically becomes the issue that we are focusing on. The youngsters today have opportunities, phenomenal opportunities. And also, similarly, phenomenal kind of opportunities to lose things. This is basically, that's where you have. And today you're seeing a lot of youngsters doing well and doing really well in the world stage. And I think it's a great opportunity. And I've seen youngsters, go to the market and phenomenal values today. And there's a lot of money chasing after very few opportunities. So it's a different perspective. But what has changed is, I think, the difficulty in terms of internal trust. And those days, you could probably walk in and ask for something, and people would give it across. Saying today, you need to really prove that what you're saying is correct, and you need to get it approved. So it's a different game. But as I would always say, it's the same game of cards, whether you deal with 13 cards or 17 cards or it's 5 cards. It's only the degrees of difficulties which changes, but the game still remains the same.
So you have been into manufacturing, seen exports closely. What do you think? Where is the opportunity after the China Plus model, especially in India? And what needs to be done from the government side to just make sure that manufacturing again becomes a very important driver in the overall GDP formula, where it lost its sheen and services took over? But where do you think that what needs to be done, and how do you see exports and manufacturing in India for the next 5-7 years?
See, today, actually, it's the turn of India to shine. It's basically, we have which is actually maxed out in terms of their potential. Their population is aging, don't exist anymore. And they're having an issue in terms of how they're going to really access the world market with the higher cost and all that. You're seeing that come in. And this opportunity, if it really were to exist, India actually acts to define policies for long term. But we don't understand the concept of long term. We have people making policy changes every few minutes. Forget hours or days. So we have changes within the last 5 years. You have actually flipped back. I mean, a telecom sector, for instance, is a huge reality check. I mean, the reason the sector is really in trouble is because of policy changes so many times.
Correct.
Right. And that is something which is evident to a common man. But the similar changes have happened in every sector. Because I think people feel that you can just flip the switch and everything will change. It doesn't happen that way. Because if you start doing this so often, the entrepreneur basically switches off. Because what you need is a stable environment for you to plan. When you're planning a 20-year future and a project you are based for, 15 to 20-year projections, and then somebody changes your complete policy 5 years down the line, then I'm no longer going to make a 10 or 15-year policy. I'm going to make 2-year policies and 3-year policies, because before the guy changes his mind, I want to get out. So this is a basic problem that we have, that the government is not looking at long term. Government is looking at very, very short term and knee-jerk kind of reactions. So regardless of which government it is. And it's been the history of India that even over the last 15, 20 years, you've kept on changing policies, kept on changing incentives, we kept on changing priorities. So this is something which is very disturbing for a young entrepreneur. Okay, so for him to succeed or fail, it basically depends upon environment, and the environment keeps changing all the time. So I would think as a government, it's not really important for the infrastructure as such or everything else, but the policies have to be stable. So we need to define a policy which will stay stable for next 20 years. Then, okay, you say this is how you achieve. And that's something I think we need to learn as a country, and to produce such long-term policies so that people can plan. That's a basic problem that I see in India. Otherwise, everything else is good. And the world is changing. I mean, right now, if you're looking at energy, the energy costs have gone through the roof in the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Correct.
So we don't know where it's going to end.
Yeah.
And are we at a moment of change? I mean, if you read Ravi Batra's book, The Theory of Social Cycles, so are we looking at a change like what happened in 1945 when we went from a colonial rule into capitalism? Is capitalism taking a hit? And is it going to be a different set of rules that we're going to rule by? So this is something which is quite staring us in the face. And we need to really look at ways of, because the resource allocation has always been based on the valuation and money. But now money and valuation don't seem to really matter. So how are we going to allot resources? How are we going to really look at priorities? So it's an interesting time. And we need to be very careful as a country to make.
Lovely. It's been lovely interacting with you, Dr. Manickam. Some of the ideas you shared about entrepreneurship, especially to the young generation. How are the trends that you see for the future? What are the actions you need, probably from your side, that government should do? And of course, an ideas on spirituality, as in one should be comfortable with his own self and just take it lightly, have fun. I mean, that's the way to live life. I think that's some very, very interesting inputs. And I'm sure all the people who will watch this are going to take some interesting takeaways from our discussion. Once again, I would like to thank you for your time. And all the people and the viewers in Treasury Elite will definitely make a lot of sense of our discussion today.